This experiment is an oil spill. Obviously we've got some water. I put a little blue food coloring in it to make it more a little realistic like it's the water. And I have some little bath toys to represent the wildlife. Now this is something obviously could be involved in chemical. It could also have to do with biological, because you could talk about the effects on animals and the wildlife, whether it be things that are in the ocean or things that eat animals that come from the ocean, like birds and so forth. Even the otters or whatever eats different kinds of fish and can cause problems with an oil spill. Obviously, for years people have tried to make good explanations about how to clean up oil spills, and they have come out with some products that industrially people can use to help clean up oil spills that sort of cause them to pull together and try to get as much of that oil out as possible. But inevitably there's going to be oil in any kind of an oil spill that causes damage. So let's talk about what some of those things are. So I got some oil from the local oil change place, and so I'm just going to drop a little bit of oil. And again, this lesson could include explanations about things like oil and water. You can see that it's beating up and that all of that oil is floating to the top of the water. And you can imagine if this was thousands of gallons of oil, what kind of a mess this would be. Now, obviously one of the things that if you're a person that owns an oil tanker, or you're a company that owns an oil tanker, and you have a spill, you've got to think about how you're going to get that together. Now, it seems reasonable that obviously since it makes big puddles like that, it ought to be easier to collect out in the ocean. So let's see if it is or not. So if we take something like paper towel, and I know they don't use paper towels in the ocean, but we can simulate what they're talking about and see if we can pick up that oil. Now, you can see that I'm picking some up, but obviously even with that, in those particular little puddles, I am still leaving some. How long would it take to do that in the ocean when you had thousands of gallons spilled? A different kind of product maybe perhaps, so let's try a cotton ball for our experiment. That did a much better job because that pulled up that whole glob of oil all at one time. Again, how long would it take to do that? And it's not like you're going to send out little people in rowboats with Q-tips or cotton balls to get that oil spill cleaned up. Some people even have suggested things that are similar to a sponge to see if it would absorb. And again, like the cotton ball, it absorbs some, but you can see that it doesn't even hold a candle to what the cotton balls do. So even something like a sponge doesn't do the best job, even though it can be some examples of that. Now, when you watch TV, they talk about, well, they show you washing the little ducks and that kind of thing to try to get the oil off, and there's some of those animals that they can do that for. Obviously, some things you can't. You can't get the fish out of the bottom of the ocean and wash the scales with anything. But they talk about Dawn dishwashing liquid, and so that's what we're going to look at today, because you can see that now some of my little creatures have oil on them. So how complicated is that? If I use just a paper towel, you can see that I can get the black part of it off, but I don't know whether you can tell or not, it still has that film on there. If I'm a bird and that's on my feathers, that keeps me from flying, because that extra weight causes those to stick together. So sometimes that's a problem. You can see that it's a lot of work for me to get it off of this little plastic toy, much less a real animal which doesn't understand what you're doing. And where he's got little indentations in his in the toy, it's hard for me. I can't even get all of that out of the middle. Then here's a little starfish. You can see that he got quite a bit on him, and you can see how much aggravation that is. Now let's try it with some liquid Dawn, which is, as I said, when you watch commercials or if you watch any of the videos about that, this is the product that they use to try to get that oil off of things. What it does is it breaks up the composition of the oil, and it does make it a lot easier to get this off of things that are delicate, like the wings of a little baby duck or a bird of some kind. But again, you can see that it's really a real problem. The amount of time and energy that is spent, not to say anything about the money that's exhausted in trying to take care of oil spills, is one of the reasons that this kind of biological disaster can have ramifications in the ocean for years and years to come. There's lots of lessons that could be done with this particular example about an oil spill.